I'm not Roy Whalen, but I'm going to take his time and my time because he said I could do that. My name is Phillip Torrey, and I fish out of Winter Harbor, Maine. My family has fished there forever. My great-grandfather stood in line to get the first lobster licenses handed out, and he got number 10. I have that license now handed down from generation to generation. I first of all would like to thank, I'm way too tall for this mic, but I would like to thank everybody for coming, you know, Democrats, Republicans, everybody, because I'm a firm believer in the old school that if you sit down and look someone in the eye, you can accomplish something. And so I thank you all, NOAA and everybody, especially thank you to come, you know. It was like when you stood up, I was like, I wish I could just sit down and have a cup of coffee with her, you know, but here's what I just want to say. I don't want to bust on anybody, but, you know, the science isn't always right. And we're out there every day for long hours, and we see stuff that, you know, scientists wouldn't see. Like maybe my friends, you know, down to the west that are saying, "You guys seen any whales?" We see a lot of whales, a lot of herring, pockets herring. Say, "Really? No, we don't see any." And then my buddies in Stonington are saying, "Wow, you notice the whales?" You know, then it, you know, so you pick up on stuff you might not pick up. Like obviously, the herring's moving east, the whales are moving east. You know, I go to Bar Harbor and sit down and drink a beer, and I'm talking to a buddy that runs a whale watch. He's like, "Man, we got to go more east to find whales," you know. Talk to friends in Canada. They're like, "Wow, we're seeing," you know, that's stuff that you don't always see. So the science of what you know, you need to be out there. You need to see this. I just had lunch with a guy doing a huge study on great white sharks. And he started in New Zealand. He's been to Africa. Now he's coming up the whole coast. And his whole study is, he's friends with scientists, but he wants to go away from it and just talk to people that are out there every day. And that's all we ask is, like, you know, when you think of this, you have to sometimes go in with an open mind. And here's what we know. We know that when this started, we don't know right whales. We used to see whales all the time. We didn't see right whales. When you told us to go to the weaklings, we went to them, you know, way back 1997. And we felt like, wow, you know, the old timers said, don't do it. Don't do it because once they get their foot in the door, they'll have you doing so much shit. You'll be tying wire ties on your rope and weak links. And we're like, no, this is gonna. 20 years later, I'm looking at my dad who's 86, and he's going, "I told you not to put the goddamn weak link." But anyway, we live in a world where you can investigate stuff yourself. And I always tell people, like, I have people say to me, "Phil, I want to know, like, they're from California or something. Do you just get used to seeing dead whales? Because I feel like that would bother me." And I'm like, I got my first boat in 1991 when I graduated high school. So I've fished since then, and since 1996, I've only fished in federal waters. So I spend my time out where whales are. And I fish with a lot of guys that are maybe older than me that have never laid eyes on a whale because they don't fish anywhere near the whales. And Sonny or somebody mentioned it, you know, I get my kids' traps ready. I have a niece that fishes, and I'm sitting there rigging up 15-fathom singles and putting a breakaway for a whale. And I'm like, you talk to the wardens, and they say, "Hey, we don't make the rules. We got to enforce them, you know." It just doesn't make sense. A whale would be ground out before he could get wound up in the trap. And if he did, he'd just take the trap off with him. Nothing would break. So if you Google entangled right whales, Google image it yourself, and you look at it, and you're like, wow, what do they do? And if you don't know this, you live anywhere out of state, you might think, oh my God, they're killing whales. But what you don't know is, these are the pictures. And I didn't sort through a bunch of pictures. I just took the pictures that were there. This is what we have to have. On every flotation that we have to have this. And it has a 600-pound weak link breakaway. Please find me an entangled right whale picture anywhere on the internet that has a 600-pound breakaway. These buoys are spliced through the whole buoy, most of them knotted spindles. There's nothing that breaks away. What happens is when the right whale's tail comes up and down, it wraps around. This acts as an anchor, so it can't get free, and it will stop it and anchor it down. But take it a step farther. You will notice that everyone in every entangled right whale you see has float rope, usually in his mouth. The reason they can get it in their mouth is because the Canadian crab gear and stuff can fish float rope all the way to their flotation devices. So on a slack tide, or even, you know, on a flood tide most of the time, the surface of the water is going to be covered with float rope. And when I say covered, this whole room, you would see that much rope floating everywhere. Because when the tide runs hard ebb, they have to have it on there to go under. So we should do this. So when the whales come up, they can get it in their mouth. We can't do that. Ours goes straight down. If a whale has his mouth open here, they go to the side. These are just facts. But we did it, And years went by, and we started to see pictures like this. And we all said to each other, I know everybody, from Cutler to Stonington, I know probably everybody in this room. And we drink beer and talk it over, and we know what. But the point is, we felt like we'd done something good. We were like, wow. Boy, I'm glad we put those breakaways in, because you see those pictures on CBS of the whale entangled? But it didn't matter. And then we're like, hold it, we have more reductions. Didn't they see those pictures? And if you Google image dead right whales, you will see a pile of dead right whales that are very obviously hit with a propeller of a boat, chopped up, dead. I fish out of Winter Harbor. We have all the fast cat ferries that go 50. We get every cruise ship in the entire world comes in there. And before any of this came around, you see a dead whale. And people would say, God, did you see that dead whale floating over by the Scudic Ridge? No, really? And we ride over by it. You guys see a whale? You pull up to it. I mean, we're not like murderers here. And we'd be like, man, that's too bad. Look at it. And it's blatantly, obviously been hit by a boat. It's laid open like it got hit by a hatchet. And you're like, well, that's what's killing the whales. But it didn't matter. You never heard about that. Boom, more regulations. Now we got to go to smaller rope. So then we go to smaller rope, parting traps off, parting trawls off, nightmare someone over you. And we're like, okay, you see more pictures, more data comes out. Everybody shows it. It's not our rope. Our rope's not even close to that big. Our haulers wouldn't even haul that rope. It's bullshit. But you still do it. I'm almost done here. I'm like Jimmy Valvano. I'm not giving up yet. So here is the last thing here. And this is like, you can't imagine. So if I have all, I don't know, half-inch rope with 7/16, and you tell me I can't have it no more, it's like 10, 15 grand, And then once you guys made it so we had to have sync rope, shockingly, sync rope shot up, triple what it ever was. And now we have to have all of it. So the next step in line, and it's important for me to say, we were doing this when no one north, no one south of us was doing it. You talk to them, they go, you guys really putting that shit in your rope? You really doing all those regular? Yes. So this is an important one. I made these. Jeff?
3 hours it took to make these little things.
Anyway, I'm not a copy, but this was a hard one for us. So we always had, this is called tail warp, ground line, whatever you had. This is how that would look on bottom. Our traps would have floating rope so that, they stayed up bottom and didn't chafe, and we could haul them and they would come up. If someone got in the wheel, someone cut your traps off, you could still grab them and you could go into it. But you guys told us, even I fished in 50, 60, down to 90 fathom water. You told us that this guy is going to be diving so deep to feed that he's going to get this in his mouth. So we got to make them so they sink. Here's a major issue for us. And we said we don't want to do it. They're not doing it north of us, they're not doing it south of us. But again, we did because we said, we talked to you, and we felt like we don't want to kill right whales. No one wants to kill whales. I don't want to kill any endangered animal. I see a whale, especially a humpback, doing all the cool shit he does. I shut it down, push the traps open, go watch him, send pictures to all my friends out of state. I'm sure we all do.
25-minute videos.
5-minute videos, 7-minute videos, selfies, and then behind you, the whole video. So when you make us do this, we have to put this down now. So now all our lines are down, and they're on the bottom. And now it's chafing. Every time the tide ebbs and flows, it's chafing. The rope's all chafed up. We'll try to haul the trap. Boom, this part's off. Now we got all these other traps sitting on bottom. I can't tell you how many traps are on bottom just from this rule right here. Dangerous, incredibly dangerous. So one of these wraps around the rock, you're trying to pull a rock up, setting the traps out. Lobsterman can get killed, can get hurt. That shit kinks up, it catches, you have to knot it because it's chafed. Now you talk about we have to fish this with 50 trap trawls. I got a 42-foot boat. I've used my buddy's 46 wide investment. 50 trap trawls. You have any idea how dangerous that is? What that'd be like to try to get 50 traps over without a catch or something, especially going 35 miles. People will die, without question. People will die. More traps will be stuck in the water. It's just not feasible. So I'm not here to tell you, like, screw you, screw this, screw the Republicans. I'm trying to tell you about the science that we're dealing with this.
Speak into the mic, Phil.
Sorry, okay, yes. All right, sorry. So when you look at the data, my dad always told me, tell the truth, and you want to hope what you say lines up with what happened. And believe me, he did not speak lightly, so you learn to tell it like it is. And there's a saying that says, obviously it's not working, or obviously it's working. So we're the only ones that did everything you told us to. And when you look at your statistics, I feel like, not just trying to be biased here, anybody that looked at statistics will say, obviously, what Maine's doing is working. 2019, here come the right whales. Here they come. The right whales are migrating from down south up north. Lo and behold, 5 of them are entangled and dead south of our borders. 12 of them are ship strike entangled and dead north of our borders. But you don't even have an entanglement, a dead whale. No one's even got a picture of a right whale in our waters. Something's working here, right? Like, that's all we're saying. You can't lump us in with, okay, well, no, Maine didn't kill any, but they killed one down outside of North Carolina and then someone in Rhode Island. So we're going to take the USA as a whole and come up with this system that says basically Maine killed a half a right whale because the other guys, all we're saying is there's a saying up and down the coast of Maine, the old timers used to tell us. If you heard something and they weren't as true, they used to tell me anyway, probably shouldn't say this being recorded, but they said, heist that up on side and step back and look it over. But don't bring it aboard because there's a lot of bullshit in it. And that's kind of how we feel. We want the science to show it. We want to tell you what we've done. Man, it's costly. It's time consuming. I mean, hours out in the shop and I got shrink wrap and I'm changing tailor warps and I'm putting friggin' weak links in and I'm like, but we do it because we hope it makes a difference. And in our minds, if you look at the last 20 years, it damn well has made a difference. And all we're saying is, please think that.